Today on the Dolby Institute podcast, we have a special conversation we just recorded in front of a live studio audience at the 2024 Sundance Film Festival. We're talking today with filmmakers to discuss what it takes to get into the festival, as well as how to make the most of it once you do. This is another live panel discussion hosted by our good friend, Dolby Institute Fellowship winner, and Sundance Film Festival alum, Carlos López Estrada. This is part of our Satellite Sessions series, which we're bringing to you in partnership with Anti-Gravity Academy and the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment. Once again, we are extremely proud to bring these conversations to you. They are filled with real-world advice and provide essential knowledge for filmmakers interested in premiering their works at Sundance or anywhere else on the film festival circuit. Take it away, Carlos.
So thank you so much for coming. I premiered my first movie here at Sundance 6 years ago, and it was nothing short of a dream come true. But this is not about me. This is not about me. I'm saying that because I have experienced what all five of our panelists are experiencing right now, and it's this insane adrenaline rush of playing your first movie for groups of audiences who love film, and it's the most magical thing in the world. So we're so happy that all five people who you're about to meet agreed to come here to share a little bit about how they ended up here. And I hope you got to see some of these films, because I got a chance to see all five, and they're all truly magical. So I hope this is a good kickoff to Sundance. So first up, we have Alessandra La Corazza. She is a queer Colombian-American writer-director based out of Brooklyn, 2020 WGA East Film Nation New York Screenwriters Fellow, and 2020 Elite Media Market Fellow. Her short Mami premiered at the 2019 Palm Springs Short Fest, and she is here premiering her first feature in the summers.
Thank you for having me.
On Monday. Next, we have Laura Chin. She is a writer, director, and actor. Her most recent work is a comedy series called Florida Girls, which she created and acted for Pop TV. She previously appeared in a number of films, television shows, including Grey's Anatomy, My Name is Earl, Happy Endings, and Warrior. And she is here premiering her directorial debut, Suncoast. Next, we'll welcome, hi Laura, Titus Kafar. Titus Kafar is an international, it's hot. He's an internationally esteemed artist whose work is included in collections at MoMA, the Whitney, and the Met, which is amazing. Titus has an MFA from the Yale School of the Art, and awards include a Robert Rauschenberg Artist, Artist Activist Grant, and MacArthur Fellowship. He is here premiering the incredible feature, his first movie, Exhibiting Forgiveness. Thanks for joining us, Titus. India Donaldson is next. She is an LA-based filmmaker and screenwriter. Her shorts include Medusa, Hannah's, and If Found, and she is here premiering her first feature, Good One. And last, we have Sean Wong, a filmmaker from Fremont, California, Google Creative Lab 5 alum, former Sundance Ignite Fellow, and 2023 Sundance Screenwriters and Directors Lab Fellow. His latest film, Nine and Waipo, premiered at South by Southwest, where it won the Jury and the Audience Award, and will be released soon by Disney. He is here premiering his debut feature, Didi. Thank you all for coming. I feel like in a couple months, we're going to look back and say we had the all-star team of Sundance directors here. So thank you so much. Okay, so to start off, we'll just go around, whoever wants to start, or we can go in a line, whatever makes most sense. But we'd love to hear, anyone can go online and read the synopsis of your movies, but we'd love to learn about your films in a slightly more personal way. So please just tell us what these stories mean to each of you. And should we go this way? Should we go that way?
You decide.
We're going to start with... I'm looking at Sean. He's like, no, no, no. Do you want to start with something? We'll start with Alessandra,
Yes,
and then we'll go that way.
The idea for my film actually came from conversation with my sister, who's here. We were sitting on a kitchen table, and we were just talking about my dad and all the summers we spent with him, and kind of remembering different things and how memory is so fickle. And you're like, she remembered it that way, I remembered it that way. And it was in that setting that I was like, oh, that's a really interesting structure for a film, is to kind of look back at a man's life and examine it through the eyes of his daughters that see him periodically and just in the summer, and just to see the changes that happen in a person during that time. And to examine addiction, examine love, examine anxiety, to not be able to connect, that failure to connect that sometimes happens with parents. And that was kind of the impetus. But what I really wanted to do was tell a story of a beautiful Latin man who has addiction, has anger, has mental health issues, but at the end of the day, loves his daughters and really wants to be a good parent, but it keeps getting in the way of being able to do that. Yeah.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful movie.
Hi. God, I didn't come up with this idea. The universe did, because it's kind of like a true story. So I couldn't have invented it. My brother was in hospice in 2005 when I was a teenager. He was passing away. He had brain cancer, and there was a woman named Terry Shivo who was in hospice at the same time. She was on life support. Her husband was trying to take her off life support. Her parents wanted to keep her on life support. It was this huge national debate, and she was down the hall from my brother. So when I was like 18 years old, I was getting my car searched for bombs and getting patted down at the entryway and trying to say goodbye to my brother at the same time. So that was just this very strange, coincidental thing that happened, and I've been wanting to tell that story for a super long time. And 5 years ago, started writing the script and then invented all the other details, so I can take some credit. But yeah, that's the story in a microcosm.
Hello. I mean, so much of exhibiting forgiveness is based in my life experience, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, and I'm sure we'll get into it later. Obviously, certain things change when you start writing a script. Those details that were specific and important for that reason over there don't matter so much over here because it's stopping you from getting the core of what you're trying to say. So I really made this film to be able to have a conversation with my sons. I wanted my sons to understand where their father comes from and why I am the way I am with them. And so it started as writing, the writing then transitioned into paintings, and then the paintings continued to evolve into the film that it is today.
Early pandemic, I was living at home with my father, my stepmother, and teenage half siblings, and really like enmeshed in family dynamics. It was the first time I'd really lived at home since being a teenager. And, I'm sure many people can relate to this, but the containment just, brought old family dynamics to the surface, and observing that and kind of observing myself in that environment, I felt inspired to tell a story that, would feel contained and intimate, but really delve deep into these dynamics. And I grew up hiking and camping and road tripping with my dad. That's what we did together. And so my film's set on a backpacking trip with a teenage girl, her father, and her father's old friend. And I was thinking about how the woods, you're in this sort of open-ended, expansive space, but can feel quite claustrophobic at times when you're, with the same people for days on end. And So I really, set out to write something that would feel intimate and contained, but emotionally expansive. Yeah.
Our movie is called Didi, and Didi means little brother in Mandarin, but it's also a very endearing term that a lot of like Chinese mothers call their younger sons. And it's a story that's very personal to me. But the seed of the idea really was, I love movies about adolescence. I love movies like Stand By Me, Ratcatcher, Eighth Grade, Water Lilies. And the very initial seed of this idea was, what if you took a movie like Stand By Me, but instead of like 4 white kids in the woods, it starred, kids like me and my friends. And I grew up in a city called Fremont, California, in the Bay Area. And I grew up around, just such a multicultural community. Like a lot of my friends are Asian American, but like not just one type of Asian American. I grew up with like Taiwanese kids, Korean kids, Vietnamese kids, and just like even in the South Asian, I had a lot of Pakistani friends and Indian friends and Bangladeshi friends. And but when I saw Stand By Me, I was like, those relationships remind me of me and my friends. It was like so honest, so crass, so emotional. And so that was really the seed of the idea. And over the course of maybe like 6 or 7 years of writing it, it was just a movie about friendship for a really long time. And it was just writing hyper specifically to these characters. And I was like, something's missing. And I'm not sure what it is, but I was like, I really want to write about like my family, but I also really want to write about my mom. And this was probably in like 2019 or 2020 that I had that thought. And in 2017 and through like 2019, I was making all these short films, and for some reason they kept being about my mom. And I was like, I made this short about my first year living in New York City, and it was like chronicled by voicemails left by my mom. And I made this other short film that was about how like my sister had kids and became a mom, and then my mom became a grandma. And then even at work, I was like making stuff that was like about Mother's Day, and I was like, dude, I do not want to be the mom filmmaker. And then it was that first, I don't know if you guys felt this way on your project. Sounds like a lot of you were writing it for so long, but it was the first time that like the project was like, I think you want to write about your family. And like, if you don't do that, you're doing your project a disservice. And so I just kind of jumped in one day, and it was like this well that opened. And I was like, oh, this is a love letter to my mom. This is a love letter to like immigrant moms encased in the trappings of a movie like Stand By Me. And so that was kind of the eureka moment. And that's our movie.
Well, I would love to talk a little bit about the set of circumstances that brought each of you to your first film, because all 5 of you had such a specific and really, really fascinating path. Some of you come from fine art. Some of you have acted before. A lot of you have done documentary and short films. So can you just talk a little bit about how your previous creative experiences led you to making your first feature, and how do you feel like those experiences informed the way that you directed? Should we go in the same order? Yeah.
I love this order.
Okay, great.
I'm lukewarm on this order. But I always thought I was going to go into academia. I was like the nerdy science kid who couldn't get enough of the textbooks and staying up late with the chemistry and the whatnot. But then I went to college and kind of found sociology and psychology, and that's what I ended up majoring. And then thought I was going to get my PhD. I was like, I'm going to study how stereotypes are transmitted through media. That's what I was really interested in doing. And then kind of in a very lesbian fashion, broke up with my girlfriend, ended up moving into a studio apartment with my ex and her current girlfriend, 2 dogs and a cat, and it was like a basement apartment in Midtown, and it was like the financial crisis was in full swing, and I was just like, fuck it. Like, forget about financial stability. I want to make films. It's always been my passion. It's always what I really, really, really wanted to do. And so I was gonna go to film school. That was the plan. But then I ended up getting an internship at a boutique commercial editorial house called Lost Planet. And I started interning there, and then from there kind of worked my way up, and I got into editing. And editing kind of became my first love and first passion in film. And it's also how I paid my bills. And I think that has been very important in my career as a director and writer, because I think editing is a form of writing. It's, you're just kind of writing with your fingers in a different way. but I think it's made me be able to see the film visually in my head a little bit clearer. And when we were in the editing room, I was like, slash, 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 with like, no, like, I was like, oh, I loved that. I remember how hard that was to shoot. Cut it out. And I think that really served me well to be able to have that craft in my back pocket.
Yeah, I came from comedy, which I'm sure you guessed when I was talking about my dead brother a second ago. And Suncoast is actually like comedic. I mean, it doesn't sound hilarious on the log line, but it is actually, there's a lot of comedy in it. But it came out of like, I wrote for so many television shows that were just kind of strictly comedic, and there wasn't emotion in them. And a lot of the shows I wrote on were sort of allergic to emotion. And I'm a just emotional basket case. I'm a mess, y'all. And so I was like, I wanted to start writing about emotions and real feelings and people. And I've always gravitated towards movies that do that sort of juggle comedy with real feeling. Where you can laugh and then suddenly you're crying and you don't know how you switched to that. And so that was the impetus for writing something more personal and more emotional, was kind of finding that part of my voice of like, how can I make these people real and grounded, and we care about them, and they're not silly and they're not caricatures, but we're still laughing because, I don't know, pain is funny and death can be funny and grief can be funny. And I have a dark sense of humor. So that's where I came from. And I think that answers your question. Tight.
I'm a painter. I make paintings, and my practice has started with painting, but transitioned as the piece of art needed to transition. So I had this idea for this piece. I won't go into the piece, but I needed to learn how to work with glass. So I learned how to work with glass. Then I had this other piece where I needed to learn how to work with wood. So I learned how to work with wood. In other words, I didn't want to be that hammer looking for a nail, right? I wanted to make the work and allow the work to be what it wanted to be. So this project came to me as life experience, but in terms of it being a film, it started as a documentary. And that was an accident. I was in a situation, I'm not gonna get into details because there's way too many cameras here. I was in a situation with my father wherein I challenged him to be recorded as a kind of a confession. And to my surprise, he said yes, and I went to his house to film him, and I was expecting to be there for 15 minutes, and I was there for 3 days. But when I finished the film, I felt like it only told me about where I was. It didn't tell me about how I got there. And so that how I got there was part of the impetus for trying to tell the whole story. How can I get to how I got there so I can explain this to the people I care about?
Wow. Is that film, is that interview with your dad?
Hell no, nobody will ever see that.
Okay,
no,
good.
Nuh-uh. No,
Fair.
I did a screening of it, and then at the screening, I walked up on stage and I was like, "Hey, everybody, I'm glad you're here. I'm never showing this shit again." And so I've kind of, I shared it with Andre, the lead for the film, Andre Holland, because I felt like it's information he needed to experience, but I don't see myself putting it out in the world like that.
Fair.
Yeah.
India.
So my father is a filmmaker, and I grew up watching him make movies and had this incredible luxury of being exposed to the process. But I also had one very specific idea of what it meant to be a filmmaker, my dad, and was not me. And it was no fault of his. He was always very encouraging, but I strongly felt that was not, who I was. And so I had a completely different career. I worked in fashion for 10 years. I made custom textiles, and I loved doing it. But I got to a point where I realized that I was secretly writing screenplays for myself and also discovering films of some of my favorite female filmmakers who I didn't find until I was in my 20s, and finding new models and new modes of storytelling. And realizing I had to try it. And so I did try it, and I loved it, and I loved this other career too, and the two things sort of just passed each other by, and one sort of overtook the other. But I think my love of craft and detail and working with your hands, like all of these things come into the process for me. So there's so many ways in which they're interconnected, I think, and also just I'm so grateful for having life experience beyond what I'm doing now to draw from in writing. But yeah.
Sean.
I guess for me, take you guys way back to 2007. No, but it all leads back to skating for me. I grew up a skater. I fell in love with skating in like 6th grade, and it was like the first thing in my life that was mine. I'm a younger sibling. All my cousins are older than me. And so growing up, I was like, what music are they listening to? Like, I'm going to dress like them. I'm going to talk like them. I'm going to be like them. And then I found skating, and it was just like I fell in love immediately. And like that became like the identity that I kind of took on. I was like, oh, I'm a skater. And through skating, I fell in love with cameras and photography and making videos. And I sort of, kind of came of age during a time where like cameras were more accessible, and so I was just like filming myself in my garage, and this is very one-to-one with like the character in our movie. But I started falling in love with filmmaking through that, and I discovered people like Spike Jonze, and I watched this video that he did that was a skate video, and like I always loved movies, but I think as like a kid, when you don't know anyone in the industry and you're just like a director, you're like there's no way. You watch these big movies, you're like I can't do that. But then I saw this skate video that he did that was just like, it's this video called Fully Flared, and it's like explosions and slow motion skateboarding, but it's like super emotional. And I was like, why am I like crying? But I was like, whoa, like that felt like a movie. I wanna do that. And I didn't know what it was, but I want to do that. And I like got obsessed with his skate videos, and I tried doing that with all my skate videos, and I like couldn't do it. And then in 2009, Where the Wild Things Are came out, and I remember he had a skate company, and they were doing like a collaboration with, they were doing like Where the Wild Things Are boards. And I was like, oh, fuck, they're selling. Oh, sorry. I was like, oh, they're selling out. They're like collaborating with Urban Outfitters. But then I was like, oh, no, like Spike directed that huge like $100 million movie, like, but he makes skate videos. And then I like, probably Googled him and like, wait, he does music videos and commercials, and like found his catalog. And I was like, wait, here's a skater who's like making all this stuff. And it just like kind of cracked my head open. I was like, oh, I thought I could only make skate videos because I'm a skater. And then I think all throughout like high school, I didn't even think of it as filmmaking, but I was like, oh, let's try and make a doc. Let's try and make this. Let's try and that. It was just like fun. And then that was, I guess, like the origin story. But then after I graduated college, I got this really cool opportunity to go work at Google for a year. And I thought it was going to be this like weird detour from everything I was doing. It was in New York. I didn't know anybody in New York, but ended up being this really fruitful education in a way. A lot of our movie, it takes place in the late 2000s. And a lot of our movie kind of integrates that like late MySpace, early Facebook, sort of like AIM time period. And I realized when, looking back at my childhood and looking back at the movies set during that time, I'm like, they all never used technology in the right way. I think like by the time we started integrating technology into our stories, like the UI had completely changed, like how we talk online changed. And I was like, no one's ever shown MySpace in like a way that actually feels good. No one's ever like done that in a movie that takes place during that time. And so I learned all those, like I was working at Google, and I was like, oh, and like thinking about this movie, and I was like, oh, we should like use all the screen stuff. It like felt new. And then it was just like making shorts. I made a lot of docs. And then when this movie, and I started writing this movie, and everything just kind of, like all the things I was doing just kind of crystallized into the like making of this movie, I think.
Well, that actually leads perfectly into the next question, which is a lot of people who are going to be watching this online are emerging filmmakers who are, putting their first movies together, doing the writing, trying to sort of like break into this world. And I think it's always so fascinating to think about the moment when a movie goes from a possibility to a reality. And I'm just so curious. We'll do reverse order this time for you, Alessandra. But if you can just tell us a little bit about if you have any memories of that moment where this dream of like, okay, maybe this is one day going to be a thing. Maybe I don't have the cast. Maybe I don't have the money. Maybe I don't have the support. And then when a switch flipped, and you're like, oh shit, it's happening. So Sean, we'll start with you.
It was Carlos. I'm only half kidding. No, it was, I think when you're a filmmaker and you've only been making shorts and you're just like, you tell people I'm working on a feature, and, our film got some grants like SF Film and stuff, but you're still like telling it to people and everyone's like, oh, that's nice. And it's like, oh, it's just me and I'm just writing it myself. And then, Carlos and I met he invited me to go work on his second feature, Summertime, as a second unit director. Woo! Yeah. And that was the start of a really beautiful like friendship and collaboration between us. And, he had produced a few shorts and music videos I had done. And I was writing this the whole time. And, I finally got it to a point where I was like, I think I'm ready to make this. I don't know how to get a movie made. And I think I sent it to Carlos just as like hey, as a homie, like, what do you think of this? Also, I'm trying to make it like, do you know, like, not, I was like, what do you think? And then he was like, I think I could be really helpful, actually. And then he came on as our first producer. And in a way, that's when it started to actually feel real, and, but it still took a while to get it off the ground.
For the record, that's not what I said. I said, I don't know either, but we can try together.
Yeah.
You made me sound way more confident than I actually am.
But I think for me, it was like, it was such a lonely, isolated endeavor for so long, just writing by myself, like note cards in the, apartment floor, and just thinking like, maybe one day hopefully someone will let us make this. And I remember there was a seed of an idea too, where I'm lucky to have friends who are older than me, people like Carlos who are directors, and what? He is older than me. And I remember, a lot of my friends, working in short form and really excelling and like doing music videos, and then get to this point where someone's like, hey, you look like you want to do movies. Like, is there anything you want to make? And they like didn't work on they didn't think about the movies they wanted to make, but they wanted to make movies. And they're like, oh, someone's giving us money. We have to write something really quick. And then they like spend 2 years on like a script that they just like hobble together. And it's like 2 years of their life, but it's like a pretty bad movie because they just like scrapped it together. And I was like, okay, I don't want to run into that trap. So I was like, I'm going to really chip away at this thing while I'm doing all my shorts, so that if I get to the point where I'm like, oh, someone thinks I'm qualified to make a feature, I can be like, yes, I want to do a feature. I also have it right here. I think it's makeable. It's set in my hometown. There's a bunch of stuff that takes place on screens, which I think will make it cheaper. It didn't. Yeah, I don't know if that answered the question at all.
You did.
Okay,
You did.
cool. Pass.
And
I don't know how helpful this will be to hear, but for us, it really felt like it was just a matter of willing it into existence. I wrote this script, and then I sent it to 3 people who are the producers on the film and also collaborators on creatively. They touched every part of this film, but one of them, Wilson Cameron, is the cinematographer. Graham Mason is the editor. Diana Irvine acts in the film. And they were all my friends, and I had collaborated with some of them. And, they were the 3 people that I knew, care about me enough to help me do this and to figure out how to do it. And they all pretty much had the same reaction, which was just, let's do it. Let's figure it out. And that figuring it out process never ended. It extended throughout the entire process. There was never a moment like, okay, now we've got everything we need. Let's do it. But yeah, I'm just setting a date. I mean, I remember Graham saying, let's just set a date and then let's make the movie then. And we pretty much did that.
Yeah, my experience, I think, was a little bit different. I mean, I had a situation where it felt real 100 times, and then it felt like it wasn't real 100 times. So, when I started, so I went through this very specific process of writing this film where Derek St. France, who's a producer on the film and now a dear friend and mentor, would meet with me on Fridays. I would write during the week, and then on Fridays we go through the stuff. And when we got to the end, and I, said, okay, this is it. That felt like, okay, we're making this movie. And then a long time goes by, and like the energy dwindles down, and you feel like this is never gonna happen. And then you put it into, one of your other producers' hands. Where's your Jamie? You put it in Jamie's hands, and you get questions like, okay, why is this here? Why is this here? Should we move this? This shouldn't be here. You're like, okay, I gotta go write some more. And so you get back to writing again. So then it doesn't feel real again. And then you start meeting your casting director, and then that feels real. And then people who you thought were going to be on the film are like, yeah, I can't do that because I got this other thing going. So it doesn't feel real again. So for me, it was like 100 different moments where it was like, yes, no, yes, no. The point where I knew it was real was day one on set. And at that point, I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So it was like, in that moment, you are wondering, do I really want this to be real? And so for me, what made it work was being able to lean on my cast and crew and producers who were pros and had done this so many times, and gave me the confidence to keep pushing through.
Yes, all of that. Yes. I have a psychotic manager. He's here. He's insane. His name is Ollie Obst, and I finished the script in 2020, and I sent it to him, and he called me, and he was like, "I don't give a fuck. We're making this movie. I don't give a fuck." And he was like yelling at me. I was like, "Am I in trouble?" He was like, "You're directing it. We're making it. I don't give a fuck." And so that was the first thing, and it made its way through the town, and it was on the blacklist, which was so incredible. And then Jeremy and Anna found it at Seven Deuce, and they brought it to Kevin and Francesco, who are also here, who produced Florida Project and Tangerine. And I mean, applaud them. They're here. They're amazing. And then it was kind of us, and we were like, okay, now what? We have us, but does anybody care? And so we were like, we knew we needed to get an actor. And so Jeremy got it to Woody Harrelson, which was so, Jeremy was like, it's a long shot. I don't know, but, I'd love to send it to him and have him read it. And Woody was who I wrote the role for when I was writing this character, because it's kind of an eccentric dude. He's like a protester, and I really wanted his humanity to come through. I really wanted the audience to care about him. And so when I was writing him, I was like, who's like a Southern guy that you have to love, And I thought of Woody, and I started watching Woody movies and like just channeling Woody's Southern charm. And I infused the character with him. So then Woody read the script and wanted to meet, which felt like an out-of-body dream. And yeah, he wanted to do the movie. And then we got Laura Linney, who's also in the movie, who's amazing and wonderful, and that was really when the ball started moving forward. And then Searchlight came on board, and then we started shooting in 2022. So it was like a process up until that point, but then it started to feel real. Yeah, and then it felt after Searchlight came on board, we were like, this is real, and it stayed real, and now we're here. So it was really a dream, and probably kind of an infuriating story for a lot of people, because when I first wrote it, I was told by so many people, like, it's going to take decades. You're going to be well into your 70s before you direct this. And they were preparing me for, what is so real in so many ways. But I feel like we had so much luck, so many blessings, so many angels, so many fairy godmothers that I could start writing the script in 2018 and be here in 2024 is 6 years, but still felt fast comparatively. I'm very thankful.
A lot of these producers that are getting shout outs are here today, so we'll give it up for all the film producers who made these things happen. You know who you are.
I think the first moment that it felt real to me was last week when we turned in the DCP to Sundance. I think this film was really hard to make. A lot of people had to believe in it, but I think it was a hard sell in a lot of ways. And every step of the way, I was like, okay, are we gonna shoot? They're like, I think so. I'm like, okay, so are you guys gonna get me a ticket for April? We said pre-production's in April. They're like, I think so. Just plan and I think it's happening. And I was like, okay, I'm supposed to leave in 2 days. I don't have a flight yet. Are we doing it? And they're like, yeah. I think so. We're gonna fly you out. We're gonna get the party started. And then every week it was kind of like, is it gonna happen? Is it gonna fall through? Is it like ups and downs? Like, this actor fell through, we gotta pick this other actor. The money's not coming in, we don't know. Maybe tomorrow you're not gonna be shooting anything. And the whole process like that was just so many ups and downs that I think, maybe it's also my personality. I just see one day, maybe a week, if I'm really lucky, a month into the future. And so I would just put my head down and be like, what do I have to do tomorrow? What needs to happen next week? And so I did not think about future. I was just like in the moment being like, well, I have to show up to set. I have to, do this with the editor, do that. It was just one step at a time. And so I didn't really think about anything else other than just trying to finish. And even within finishing, it was ups and downs. We don't have the money for this. We don't have the money for that. But here, this person's going to come in and do this incredible job, and they're going to defer their payment for a second until we can cover the gap. So it was a constant roller coaster. And as someone who loves roller coasters, it was like a lot for me. But also beautiful. And I got to meet such incredible people and such passionate people that really believed in the project and believed in me and believed in the story that I was trying to tell. And that was really incredible.
Okay, we're gonna ask 2 questions. We'll call this like the speed round. I don't know what it means. It just means we want to get to some individual
It
questions.
means hurry the fuck up.
No.
Speak less.
It means whatever you want it to mean. Okay, so Titus, you talked a second ago about showing up on set and having this like, oh fuck moment. Like, what am I doing? I had that moment, and I think it's our duty to dismantle this idea that directors are these like all-knowing, confident creatures. Some people maybe.
That's the thing.
But I grew up like just looking up at all these behind the scenes from James Cameron and just being like, oh, I'm never gonna be that. It's similar to what you were saying, Sean. And then I got on set and I was like, oh, I'm definitely not that. But anyway, the question here is, can you think of a moment that you had during production where you kind of just looked around and were like, what the hell is this? Was it like first time working with cast? Was it dealing with budgets? Was it any little tidbit of your production experience where
I'm gonna try to figure out how to tell this story in a polite way without disrespecting anybody. Okay, so there was a scene that we were shooting. How do I say this? It was not working. And I was trying, and we were on take 7. And I was kind of freaked out. And I remember, I don't know if Stephanie is here. Stephanie came out to me. Are you here, Stephanie Elaine? There she is. And she basically was like, we got to change all this. Like, this is not going to work. You're going to keep doing this, and it's not going to work. So we have to figure out something else. Then Derek came in, and then Jamie came in. They all huddled up, and we had to figure out a way to redo this scene that was an absolutely essential moment for understanding what happens in the film. I'm not going to tell you what it is because you're going to see the movie and you're not even going to know. But that was one of those moments where I was trying to project an energy of calm, but losing it in my head, completely losing it, because I knew how important that moment was. And so after Stephanie had done that, Andre actually is the one who kind of saved the day. And very quickly, because he's this kind of actor, he engaged, it was one of our day players, he engaged this other actor in this way that forced more out of him, because that's Andre, because he's just that dope. So that what I mean to say about all of this is, see, all of that was solved, and none of it was me. None of it was me. And that pretty much was my experience on this film. Like,
you can't lie here because you got all your people here too.
That is how I feel, whether you like it or not. That's how I feel. That my team really held me up in so many moments. It made me look good.
Amazing.
We had a virus, a stomach virus, kind of go through sets, and I'm not going to go into too much specifics, but at one point I did see one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen projectile vomit into the street, and we had to cancel the rest of the day. And then we lost 25% of our crew and had to quickly recover from that, and that was a lot.
That sounds
Yeah,
like a lot.
It was a lot. But I didn't get sick. And so we kept going, and I think at the end of the day, we only missed one scene. We were able to make it all up.
Was anyone able to trace the food that started it all?
There's a lot of conspiracy theories
Okay.
about it, so yeah.
Great.
Yes, we. So I think of Laura Linney as American royalty. I think she's just like exquisite, and I don't know. I was very intimidated to work with her. I just think she's a genius. And so her first day on set, she flies in from New York, and she's playing the mother to this 17-year-old girl who's Nico Parker, lovely actress. And Nico's nervous to work with Laura because she looks up to her so much, And everyone's like, Laura's here, and she's royalty. And she's so kind, and she's so gracious, and she's just like, oh my God, she's one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. And but there's nerves, in the crew, and everybody wants to make her happy, and everyone wants the day to go great, and she's so lovely, and we're starting, and we rehearse the scene, and it's going great, and we're blocking the scene, and we have it all figured out. And then we're about to roll on her first day, and then the first AD is like, guys, there's a hurricane coming, we're shutting down for the next week. So she was like, okay, I'll see ya. And she went back to New York. And that was, So then we all moved into a hotel, the entire cast, the entire crew, away from the coastline. We were in Charleston. And that ended up being fun. It was like game nights and a hurricane outside. It was delightful, lots of bonding. But it was definitely like, one of those things you can't plan. Yeah.
Wow. Who? India.
So speaking of the elements, most of our film was shot outdoors, and zero margin for error in our schedule. And we had thunderstorms, lightning, things that we just absolutely could not control, that made I think it was humbling for me and for the entire crew, that just like we were sort of at the mercy of nature, and we had to somehow get through it, and we all did together. And I knew, going into it, that this was something was going to happen. We weren't going to get perfect weather for 12 days. But yeah, just having to kind of all of us together think on our feet and adapt to the elements. Yeah.
I think for us it was like time with the like 14-year-old kids, and I think it ended up actually being really fun. But because our lead Isaac, sometimes he'd have to work a little bit longer than the other kids. We would have to kind of offset his hours with the kids, and so I would have to like block the scene with the other kids before Isaac got on set, and then right when he got on there, we'd be like, all right, no time to waste, get in. So there's all these like behind the scenes videos of like me acting out the scene with the other kids, and then Isaac would get on set. I'd be like, all right, Isaac, this is the scene, and come on in. But it was honestly so fun. It was definitely like, at first I was like, oh my God, like this is gonna be really challenging, but I think it made me get into this mode of like, this is all play. It's like, Sean, you're gonna have to look like a fool and like be a 14-year-old if you want this movie to be successful. And going back to like just them being like, I think I truly believe that, our movie is a period piece set in the late 2000s, but I really believe that like being 13, 14 is like, there are very many similarities as far as like how they act, how they talk, how they feel. But, we were having them use like flip phones, and so much of directing these kids was like, that was great, just don't say bet. Or like, that was great, do it again, don't say dead ass. And then they'd be like, all right, bet. I'm like, no, don't say bet. And then like they would have to use like flip phones, and I was like, it's gonna be fine because we're gonna cut to a screen anyways. They like flipped the phone open with like two hands and like held it like an iPhone, and we were like rolling in 5 minutes. I was like, oh no. I was like, okay, Isaac, like go over there and just flip the phone open like 100 times, just this. And he was like, not like this. I'm like, no, you're holding it like an iPhone, like this. But And then it was like that was like the biggest challenge with them, which was actually not really a challenge.
Okay, so we're gonna go into a personal question, not a personal question, but a question specifically designed for each person. And we're gonna start with you, Titus.
It's not going to be personal, but it is personal.
I will just ignore you.
I saw your not behind the scenes, sorry, your Meet the Artist video, which is beautiful. And you were talking about your desire to bridge the gap between the fine art, the painting world, and the film world. And I think your film does that beautifully. But I was just curious, in your vision of the future where you're able to do that, or to sort of like push that conversation forward, like what does that look like?
Thank you for asking that question. Actually, so the film has about 14 paintings that I made in the film, and so there were literally days on set where Andre would walk to the canvas, make a mark. I would put on my coveralls, run over there, fix the mark, do the thing, run back and forth, say action, cut, and be painting at the same time. So this is an exhibition and a film. My dream is that you watch the film, you walk out of the theater, and you walk directly into an exhibition space where you get to experience these paintings that you now understand why they exist in the world, which is not your experience when you go to a museum, or especially a gallery. There's a kind of opacity there where you're like, oh, you don't know what this is about? Oh, you're just not cool enough, I guess. So I want to break that down, for real. Like, I really want to break that down because I don't come from the art world. I don't come from the film world. I'm from Michigan. And the neighborhood I grew up in, we didn't really have museums. And I didn't go to a museum until I was an adult. And I didn't know a professional artist until I was already an adult. So for me, it's a way of like going back home and being present where I am at the same time. That's the bridge I'm trying to work on.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Laura, we'll go over to you. So
I want it to be very personal.
It's very personal. No, you did a TV show. Very much, as from what you can tell me how much is based on truth or not, but it seems like it's fairly autobiographical. Is that correct?
Yeah, fairly. Yeah. I mean, there's invented stuff, but a lot of
Inspired by.
Yeah.
I guess I was just curious, what specifically about your brother's story made you decide that this was a feature that would be your first feature, as opposed to potentially a storyline in your show. But I imagine something must have clicked and you said, okay, this is not that. This is.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. It's funny because I truly learned how to write features to tell this story, because I think of story so open-ended. I think coming from TV, it's like, this is a situation that could go on forever and ever and ever, a problem that will never be solved. And this story in particular, there's a boy who's dying. There's things in this movie that you wouldn't necessarily want to be like, let me tune in again on Sunday night to watch this boy die. And so I knew that it wasn't I knew that it wasn't a television show, but I knew it needed to have an ending. And so I learned for that, how do you start something, and finish it? And I started, reading features, and I have a mentor who writes features who talked me through like his outlining process, and I really had to learn how to like end something. That was really, and I think everything prior to this was just too comedic to house something that is so kind of raw and emotional. So yeah, it wouldn't have come up on Florida Girls.
India, for you, and it seems like all these movies have so much in common. Actually, well, it doesn't. I was able to see them, and they do. And it's actually, someone should organize a marathon of all these movies together, because they actually speak to each other in such profound ways. And I think it's amazing to have you all here. But India, you were talking a little bit ago about how observing your family sort of like led to the idea of this movie, specifically sort of like masculine interactions as seen through the eyes of in your movie, a young teenage girl. Just curious, what was it that you observed, and whether these were conversations that you were having with your family? Were they involved in the making of the movie at all? Did they read the script? Did you show them cuts? Like, what was that dynamic between what you saw and then what exists now on the screen?
Well, I was like,
Yeah, sorry, there's like a
5
10-part question.
questions.
Sorry. Feel free to answer just whichever one
Yeah, yeah.
is easier.
Yeah, well, masculinity and dynamics between male friendship, dynamics between men was so much part of what I was thinking about. But I mean, really, my way into that was almost like stepping out and observing myself and the way I was as a teenager and the way I, teenager into adulthood, observed men and male interactions and took on, certain emotional responsibilities around men. Yeah, so maybe more so just thinking about a young girl, myself as a young girl, and my relationship to men, friends of my father's who would pass through my life, my own father, yeah. And I mean, I spoke about my dad earlier, but yeah, he's super involved and huge supporter. And he understands, as a filmmaker himself, understands better than anyone that you can mine personal experience without it being, like pure autobiography, and that there's a freedom there, and that you can kind of maybe hopefully attain something more universal through specificity and mining personal experiences. But yeah.
Was there at any point any hesitation from his side, or just like, hey, make sure you changed the names and details, or no? He was fully.
No. There's there's always been a separation. Like, I think two things can be true at the same time, where something can be personal but also not be a direct reflection on my family. Yeah.
Thank you. Sean, so the question for you is, as you mentioned earlier, you have sort of had a career of making really personal, intimate portraits of the people and the memories of your childhood that mean a lot to you. So whether it's your mom, your grandmothers, your friends growing up, do you feel like that is the way that you create? Do you feel like you're excited to tell stories about other people, or like where in your creative process do you feel like this is a face, or do you feel like this is just you and how you love to create?
Once all the family members have a film, it's done. My career's over. No, I don't know. I think going back to what India just said, like, I think you can mine personal experience and not have it be autobiographical. I think that's kind of, how we describe our movie. And I think a lot of what you're talking about, I think like I realized the stories like right in front of you are just as potent and poignant as like the stories that are like in the headlines, like I think one big eureka moment in my life or my career or whatever was that short I mentioned earlier, where I lived in New York for a year, and I made this short film that was like a 5-minute montage. It's like not even like a real short, but it was chronicled by my mom's voicemails. And my mom, she's an immigrant from Taiwan, so she speaks to me in Chinese. It was 2016 to 2017, so it was the year that Trump got elected, and it was just very personal film. And it was the first time where I was like, I don't care if anyone likes this. I love it. Like, this is like, the first time I was like, oh, I think this is my voice. I don't know what that is yet, but it's like I'm cracking something. It was the first time I felt that like, oh, I hope people like it. I was like, I don't care if people like it. I like it. And it did really well. And it was the first experience I ever had like screening anything, and having people do a Q&A. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember screening it at Vimeo in New York. And this like woman raised her hand, and she was like, I feel like you really captured the Asian American immigrant experience in Trump's America, and like in the identity crisis, and like really lofty things. And she was like, what statement were you trying to make about like immigrants in America? And I was like, whoa. I was like standing, I was like, my mom is, I was like, it wasn't trying to do any of that. It was like, I lived here for a year and my mom speaks to me like she's from Taiwan. I don't know. But it was the first time that I was like, oh, this film did what all my favorite films do. It takes something like so personal and specific and like so local, but like kind of what India said, through that specificity, you're able to like talk about these universal themes of, you know, identity or immigration or belonging. And it was like, oh, like it just cracked something open for me. And then like, I think when I think about like some of my family members, like going back to the grandma's film, it was like, and going back to the relationship I have with my mom, you know, something I realized why I wanted to write about my mom is because like if filmmaking is all about translating an emotion, it's like that's the relationship in my life where I feel like the most of every emotion. You know, it's like the most love, but the most pain, and the most joy, but the most shame. And it was like, okay, well, if all we're trying to do is like convey a feeling, there's so much feeling there. So like as a filmmaker, that's your best weapon. You're just like, I need to dive in there. And so I think that's kind of, it's been a both like personal journey, but also like, you know, you have to look at things if it's personal, but then you also have to look at it from like kind of what Titus, like from an objective point of view too. And it's like, okay, this is all personal emotions, but then I can like, how do you take that and then tell a story? And so I think because I have so much access to like the intimate stories and feelings around me, it just felt like, okay, well, no one knows this story better than me. I'm a young filmmaker. I don't really have a ton of experience. I'm the only one who can tell that story the way that I can. And through that, I can hopefully develop a voice. So maybe it's a phase, you know, I don't want to only tell stories about, you know, that are personal in a sort of like autobiographical way, but Titus and I were talking earlier, it was like, I think even if I go and do like a 1940s, whatever, like I think it still needs to be personal. You have to like find your way in. And even if it's like a musical set in space, like hopefully there's something there that's still like just as personal as this movie.
Sandra, we'll come over to you. I think every filmmaker on this stage had to wrestle with sort of like the same challenge of creating characters that are inspired by real people, then eventually casting the actors to play these characters, working with them. Your movie is about your relationship with your dad, and you also happen to cast the most prolific, talented, recognized Spanish rapper of all time to play this role. So I'm just so curious what that process was like, and I'm sure you can talk about this for hours, but curious, what was your conversation with your dad throughout this, if there was any? And then when you brought on Residente, how did this new person embodying someone who you know so well sort of like evolve into the character that made it to the screen?
Well, my dad died in 2010, so he was long dead before I even started writing. So who knows what he would have thought. But my sister was like an ultra fan of Residente. And that's not the reason I cast him, not to, you know, I always want my sister to think I'm cool. But I really wanted someone that captured what I thought was these two contradictions in my dad, which was this insane intelligence and talent and just something that just feels like above anything else that you meet, you know, like you just meet certain people, you're like, wow, you're on this other plane. And also a little bit of that rawness, that anger, that volatility. And Renee is actually the nicest person you've ever met, but he has this persona and he can tap into that anger really quickly. And as soon as like that idea came in, I was like, this is the exact person that needs to play this part. But then, you know, as I did in all of the writing process, yes, the characters are inspired by people that exist, but they became their own creatures and their own people and their own stories. And, you know, I think my sister saw an earlier cut and she was like, that's not Dad. I'm like, I know. This is an interpretation of a certain type of man that I want out in the world. Someone that's beautiful but flawed and yeah, the grayness. I like to explore the grayness in humanity.
Did you have sort of like a mentor or an ally or a cheerleader who was with you through the process, or a number of them? And can you talk a little bit about your relationship to them?
Yes, many of them, but I think one of my biggest creative allies was one of my producers, Alex Dinelaris, whose company Lexicon came on early on. They did the option agreement. And very early on, like I sent him my script kind of hoping that he would like rip it apart and tell me about structure and tell me everything that was wrong. And he just loved it from the beginning. And I think he really understood my voice and what I was trying to say. And that kind of carried us through the creative process. But all of my producers have been so incredible and big allies. And my wife also reading everything that I write, even when it's bad. And yeah, I have a huge team of supporters in my back corner, which makes it really special.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh my God. So many people. I mean, it is like you're saying, that feeling of like, did I do anything? Because there's so many people, that champion and help and are overseeing. And I always felt like this movie had so many guardian angels every step of the way. Francesca Silvestri, who's here, was like, I mean, this woman, I mean, she's psychotic, like my manager. She's psychotic. I've never met anyone like her in my entire life. People say no to her and she's like, yes, let's go. Like, no is when she like starts fight, like it will never take no for an answer. To me, she's like, you have to tell me if you want anything, we go and we get it. And when they're like, oh, all the background was COVID tested and we paid for all of them to be COVID tested and then none of them showed up. And so we need 60 people and we have 4. Francesca's like, all right, I'm going downtown. I'm going to bring some people in. I'll be back. And she comes back with people. Like, she's insane. Yeah, I mean, she was like just a bulldog. And I tend to be kind of soft-spoken and, and she would yell for me and keep it going for me. And I'm so thankful to her. I would be dead without her. And then she'll also, tap you on the shoulder and be like, I think you're going to want to get this shot of her, like while you're trying to focus and you're like, shut up, Francesca. But then she's right. She's always right. And you sit in editing and you're like, oh, thank God she told me to get this shot, so she's just amazing. I can't say enough good things. And then also my husband, Jared Miller, who is a writer as well. And he, read every script, reads everything. I'll write like a new page and I'm like, can you give that a read, babe? And he does. So yeah, I mean, everyone's amazing, but yeah.
I already told you about my producers already and what they did. So I think the core of my life is really my family, my wife and my kids. They deal with my craziness every day. Some days I come home and I'm like, oh my God, this painting just won't work. It hates me. And my kids, my 17-year-old still likes me, which is just amazing. And, like, my 15-year-old loves me, which is great. And like they grew up with the artist as a dad. So Davin, my youngest, oftentimes will be like, well, tell me about the problem. Let's talk about it. Dad, you shouldn't do that. That's a dumb idea. Don't do that at all. And then the entire time, my wife is just the most patient person in the world. And yes, she reads everything. She's actually the best copy editor ever. So if anybody needs a copy editor, she's really good at that. But yeah, I mean, I think the hardest part of this project for me was being away from my family. I'm used to finishing the day, going home and having that like reset me and then arm me to go back out in the world, and not having that, not being able to be with my partner, not being able to be with my kids. That was harsh. That was really harsh for me. So for me, it's definitely my family.
So many people. I'm gonna repeat some of what Titus is sharing, but I had this long-held belief that I could not make my first feature film and be a mother. Like, I needed to get that done, get the film made before having kids. And that's just not how things worked out. And my son was 2.5 when we shot the film. And I mean, really, when I think about the unit of him and my husband just spending so much time together without me, and just really, I mean, emotional talking about it, but allowing me to have the space to just fully immerse myself in the process of making this film and know that they were okay. And it's so much a part of the creative process, your family at home who's Yeah, and also my husband, incredible. He's a visual artist. He's a writer. He reads everything I write, and yeah, it's all intertwined, and yeah, big part of it.
Yeah, I mean, echoing them too. I think this movie was, it's inspired a lot by my family, and I don't think I could have made it without their support. But kind of going back to what they said, like our producers, you, Carlos, Valerie, who's here somewhere, Josh. Like, I think one thing I learned on this movie for sure was like all the shorts I had made in the past were like pretty small, pretty contained. I edited it all myself, and it took a really long time to edit because I would edit for like over the course of a year, and I thought that's just how long it took for me to edit things and make things. And then I was like, oh no, we're editing a feature in a fourth of the time. Like, how are we gonna do that? And there was so much of this. I was like, the scale of it, even though it was, still independent, was a little terrifying. Like I remember stepping on set day one of my first tech scout, and I was like, okay, I think I need to know what I'm doing. And like day one on set, I was like, oh my God, look at all these trucks, and there's so many people. But then I realized like, it's just that many more people that have your back, like so many people of our crew are right there, and they're like family now. And I think that's kind of the feeling I felt all throughout production, post-production. It was like, oh, you're not in this alone. And I was like, so much of directing for me in the past was like, I'm directing, and then I'm the one who always has to like care about it the most. I'm editing, and then it's like, if I'm not editing, it's not moving anywhere. Like there's no one telling me I have to go finish it. But then it's like all of a sudden with this movie, it was like there's 20 people all around me who care about this movie just as much as I do. And like I have to learn to let others help me or I'm going to burn out. I learned that so quickly. And that was like you, that was Val, that was Josh, that was Claire. So yeah, I mean, it's like it was that just every nugget of the way. It was the Sundance Labs, it was just like anytime I felt like, I don't know what to do, where to look, there's just too much. And I remember you telling me once, there's like, you don't need a middleman. Like, give it to me. I'm like, I can do that? Just like learning that, like, just learning how to delineate and direct and just be like, oh, like everyone here is here to help, like, make this project the best it is. And I'm actually not serving the project if I'm like, no, I need to do everything. I need to do everything. And it's like, no, like everyone here is actually better at me than the things I need to do. Like, just let go and like, let everyone around you, like, help you be better. That was kind of like, like you're the worst person on set, you're kind of just like, okay, I guess I'll stop being so precious and everything will get better.
Okay, we got one last question, then we're going to try to fit in some audience questions. So if anyone there has any burning questions you want to ask, start thinking of them. We'll come back to you in a second. We didn't tell you, but this is also a hot yoga class. So you're about to premiere your movies, some of you in a few hours, some of you this weekend, some of you on Monday. And you'll get to premiere many films for the rest of your lives, but nothing's going to feel like this. So just curious, what are the thoughts and feelings and questions that are going on as you get closer and closer to show your first thing to your friends? I'm getting emotional. Your friends, your family, the people who worked with you. Yeah, what's happening here? You're the first one screening, so we'll start with you, Sean.
I'm gonna get emotional if I talk too much. Claire says I cry too easily. I'm trying to cry less than 10 times at this festival. No, I feel very like I get like shaky. I really have like tummy butterflies right now. We premiere in 4 hours, so we tech checked the movie yesterday, and India and I are premiering in the same theater, I think. And I was like, the Ray's amazing. You got to go look at it after this. But yeah, I don't know. I when I see the movie, like I see them. I see everyone who worked on it, and they're all here, so it's good.
There's a number of people, I wish everyone could have come, but there's a number of people who worked on the film, incredibly talented collaborators who haven't seen it yet. And with all the nerves and everything, I'm so excited to show it to them. having been involved in every part of the process, I think I just can't wait to hear what they think, honestly. Yeah. People that put so much into it.
I just want it over with. Am I the only one here? Like, for real, I just want it over with. I want to be done with it so that we can actually enjoy this festival. Like, my brain is so not even here with y'all right now. Like, it's really not. I want to be done, and then I can exist again.
That's fair. That's fair.
Titus, you should try disassociating, which is what I've been doing. It's great. It's fantastic. I'm fully disassociated. I keep being like, what's everyone doing here? And then like every few hours I'll get like a reminder from somebody who's like, how do you feel? And I'm like, about what exactly? I'm truly disassociated. And I don't know. I mean, I guess afterward I'll come back into my body and I'll have an answer, and my therapist and I will unpack why I left my body for 3 days. But yeah, that's how I feel.
Maybe the opposite, but maybe the same thing, where it's like I'm so present that I'm not thinking about anything other than like what's happening right this second, and maybe like 10 minutes into the future. So I'm like, oh, I'm so happy I'm here. Why am I here? But very present in that moment. I'm really excited for my mom to see it. My mom is an immigrant mom who tried so hard to keep us here in the U.S. and really worked so hard with all the shit she had going on to make sure that we had the opportunities that we were able to have. And she has some health issues, and it's very, very meaningful that she is going to come see the film. So I'm really excited for that. Yeah.
Well, we're so thankful that you made time on your weekends for us. Okay, we have 10 minutes, 8 minutes, between 8 and 10 minutes. So we're going to try to get through as many as possible. I encourage the question makers and the answer makers to keep it brief so that we can get through a couple. Over there in the back. Yes. I'll repeat it just for our online audience. Lots of hard decisions in the filmmaking process. Any particular one that stands out?
I can go. Is this for everyone?
Whoever wants to jump in.
I'm really proud of our casting directors, Natalie Lynn, Nafisa Kaptanwala. It's the first feature they've ever casted. We have like an ensemble of first-time non-actors, all like 13, 14-year-olds. They scoured basketball camps and skate parks, and I'm so proud of our cast, and like they just scoured every haystack or whatever the metaphor is. Yeah, for their first feature, and I can't wait to see what other stuff they do after this.
I wanted to ask a question to you all about, were there any myths that were debunked about being a first-time filmmaker that you felt like you experienced?
Any myths that were debunked about being a first-time filmmaker? And I'll encourage you all to keep it very brief. So yeah,
I'll say
Laura.
I had the most incredible DP who was a male. And I had a lot of people be like, be careful, you're a first-time female and your DP is going to walk all over you. But that did not occur. My DP was the most gentle, kind, collaborative, amazing, patient, perfect human being. And I was nervous about that going into it. I was like, I don't want someone to treat me like a little kid. And he did not. So that myth for me was debunked.
Anyone else?
A lot of people talk about actors as though they're children, and that they're emotionally unstable and blah, 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 blah. I didn't have any of that at all.
That working with kids is hard because it's actually incredible and amazing, and they bring so much courage and professionalism and authenticity, and I would do it again a million times over. My producers probably don't want me to, but I loved working with kids.
How did you keep yourselves encouraged and inspired and able
Downton
to
Abbey. I watched Downton Abbey for 15 minutes every night in the bathtub. That was every single night in the bathtub watching Downton Abbey for 15 minutes. I would set a timer and I'm like, all right, that's it. I'm gonna go call my DP and work on the shot list. But that was the entire process. Downton Abbey is my advice to anyone who's making a film for the first time.
I didn't watch Downton Abbey.
Oh.
But I suggest everybody take up painting. That's what I did. That really helped.
Beautiful. Sean, I'll answer for you. You skated multiple times during production. We were like, "Where's Sean? Where's Sean?" And then we'd look in the horizon, and there was this man skating.
Pickup skating, yeah. Skating and painting. There you go. There it is.
That's something.
Hot tubs.
Hot tub.
Yeah, I really like warm water to calm down. I actually did the opposite. I didn't watch or read or do anything except listen to music, go into hot tubs, and like maybe dissociate.
Yeah,
Or,
it's
like,
so good.
yeah.
It's so good.
At least just like not think about anything. I was like, what do I have to do in the next hour?
India.
The lead of our movie was 18 when we shot, and my 18-year-old younger sister worked on the movie, and we're all living in a house together. And Lily, our incredible lead actor, very professional and focused all day, and then we would go home at the end of the day after a full day of shooting, and I would see them just be teenagers together, and it was beautiful. And just watching that, I was like, chilled me out. I don't know. It's like that, yeah.
So if you want to make the perfect movie, learn to skate, find some teenager friends, and and draw and paint something while you're in a hot tub watching Downton Abbey.
Such good advice.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you all for coming.
Many thanks once again to Carlos López Estrada for organizing and moderating such an incredible conversation, and to all of the filmmakers for participating. If you enjoyed this program, please stay tuned. We will be bringing you more of the Anti-Gravity Academy satellite sessions in the coming weeks. But if you'd like to tune in live and contribute some questions of your own, be sure to follow Anti-Gravity Academy online. You can find that link in our show notes. And if you'd like even more conversations with artists and filmmakers about how they use technology to tell their stories, please be sure you are subscribed to us, the Dolby Institute podcast. You can find links to our show on all the major podcasting platforms, including the video version on YouTube, in our show notes. Or you can just search for Dolby wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're curious to know more about the Dolby Institute, head on over to dolbyinstitute.com. There you'll find information about all of our programs. You can access the entire library of episodes of this podcast, and you can sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, thanks again for joining us. This is the Dolby Institute podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. Our producer and editor is Michael Coleman. Our executive producers are Amanda Schneider and Jack Ferry, with additional editing by Matt Nixon. And our production coordinator is Karen Maroquin. Thanks for listening.